I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Dr. Joshua Kolawole from Valdymas Intelligence. And today we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart. Today I'm going to be talking about what is near and dear to my heart. I'm Dr. Joshua Kolawole from Valdymas Intelligence. So ethical leadership, balancing power, principles, and purpose. This is the real idea. Ethics requires that we do things according to a standard that is providing the greater good for every other person or thing aside from the primary person in charge. That means you're putting others before self. And that's a principle that is so difficult for the natural man to embrace because we are inherently selfish. We are inherently I want to be careful to use the word narcissistic, but we are inherently that way because it's a natural tendency for man to want to protect themselves. And in the bid of trying to protect yourself, you could go that extra mile to become very greedy, very covetous, very ambitious, especially negatively ambitious, and this can really impact the things we're doing. A company wants to keep making profit at the expense of anything that happens in their society or to their customer or to even their stakeholders sometimes. So because of this, we have the burden upon us as an individual, as a member of a family, a community, a society, an organization, and even a nation to be naturally selfish. You want your country to win the World Cup. To win the World Cup, you do everything to make them successful, including sometimes people violating the code of ethics that guides the operationalization of the whole game. And because of this, because of this pursuit of glory, we all lose that ethical guidelines that is supposed to help us achieve the goal in a righteous way. And this is actually the critical problem that we'll be evaluating today as we discuss ethical leadership, balancing power, principles, and purpose. I will try as much as possible to use personal example. I have two case studies, one at personal and one at organizational level. But I would draw out examples that are more personally relatable to drive home the key point. So I would use the story of this woman who rescued the nation's economy, the story of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. And I'm going to use the story of Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, and the transformative journey that was embraced, that he embraced by using empathy to drive Microsoft to greatness again, if I could use that word, because when he took over the reins of power, Microsoft seems to be losing his edge. He had taken over after two great giants had run Microsoft. That was Bill Gates and I think Palmer, and those two had left a landmark record. However, he had to bring about a new dimension to what Microsoft was believing. But before I go into the details of even the Microsoft initiative and Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, I want us to understand something, and this is the point where I need you to listen and understand the whole scope of what I want to do. I want you to notice that our life is a program. If you start seeing your life that way, it would help in a lot of ways. And the reason why I want you to see your life as a program, or whoever you have around you as a program, the reason is that program is defined in project management context as when you have a group of projects operating together and towards a common goal, which is a program now. So the program is like you have a group of projects and you're doing them concurrently, integrating efforts together. The benefit of one will impact the other. And in that sphere, that would bring a common goal. However, because programs are made up of many projects, you need to now understand what a project means. A project, if you know before, then I'm reminding you, and if you're just getting to know for the first time, it's any endeavor that you're taking upon that has a start and a finish line. So it has a starting point and a finishing point. The reason why you need to get this concept right is that everything about you is an integration of so many projects. Even though some things appear like operation, a lot of times if you check them properly, they have a start and a finishing date. Hence, there is a date in which you're given birth to, and there's a date in which you would exit. So meaning even your whole life as a whole, if you use 80 years, it's a project. But permit me to use the word program, and you have multiple projects in it. The reason why I need you to see it this way, so now I'm going to be using the concept of 4 P's now. The first P is the program, which is organizing the whole of our life. In that program, when you're given birth to, till maybe a certain year, you have to go to school. You're actually being trained. When you're being trained, you're actually being given some form of power. You're being given some form of power. We're going to talk about it. That's a knowledge-based power, an expertise, a skill, an intellectual form of power. Knowledge brings power. Knowledge is power. From there, you would get to a point where you probably would get married. And of course, if everything works well, marriage should end at death. That's another project. In this project, you have when you give birth to kids, you have kids. That is another project with a start time and the end time when you will no longer know that you have kids again by the time you're exiting. There are so many other things that will happen in your life. You will get employment. Maybe you got some internship in school. At a point, you move to some real organizations. You kept changing from one organization to another until you retire and you go to do something else. If you look at the integral of every part of your life, there is different projects that you're having to take on at different points. Why are all these things important? The reason why they're important is that by the time I talk to you about the principles of power, the principles that guide power and are connected to purpose, you need to understand that what will matter at the end of this whole program, what would matter to you is what are the purposes I set out for? What are the things that brings fulfillment? What are the things I'm able to achieve? And if these things would matter at the end, then you now need to understand, how do I gain this power based on these principles to achieve this purpose that will be based on right value system, right principle. That is the whole goal of this transformational outcome. Now, if you understand how to leverage power, you would generate transformative results. However, we need to check the process of getting the result to be sure that it follows a sound principle that can be replicated by another young mind whom you would mentor, whom you would hand over the success to. And at every point, you need to understand that you would be having the interrelationship between this pursuit, this power base, and this principle base. At those crossroads, you would need to ask yourself the clear question of purpose. Why are you actually pursuing or having why do you have this power? Either at personal level or at positional level, why do I have this power? And every time when you're able to answer that question of why you do have the power, it would help you classically to understand the kind of principles you're aligning with, and then that will determine the purpose in which you're going to achieve. So I want to make it personal. And permit me to use a student as an example. I would use a wrong value system now to describe it so that you would get it. So I can imagine a student who wants an increase in her score, a female student. And she thinks, okay, at personal level, I have the power to manipulate my lecturer. So at that point, there's actually a power play. There's a manipulative power from the student. There's a weakened power and principle from the lecturer. When the two aligns together, of course, manipulative power means the principle is weak from the student as well. When the two comes together, he aligns and creates a scenario where the scores is being manipulated. The lady gets a higher score, but the principle that backs that score is wrong. Hence, the goal in her mind, the purpose in her mind is that she wants to get a degree. But what she has forgotten is that going through the process of getting the degree based on sound principle is what creates a genuine purpose. If you do it through the process of manipulation, you will get the degree. But the problem is that you are going to get a paper part of the degree, but you have lost some soundness in the process. Hence, the capacity you need to achieve a bigger purpose has been lost at that point. And the reason is that your life will not only be tested because it's a program at the level of just school. Your life will be tested at workplace. It will be tested in your marriage. That principle, these same principles will be tested in any other endeavor you have in your family. If you want to build a house, the principle will be tested. If you want to secure maybe, just name it, secure any process in life, those principles will still be tested. The principles are universal. The world responds to principle. The world is principle-based itself. If you ever walk on an elevated stage and you jump down, by the principles of gravity, you're supposed to go down. But if you can bring another overriding principle, which is the principle of lift, then that can raise you up. So it means the only thing that will not make you enjoy the consequence of one principle is you had better go for a higher principle. And that's why an airplane can rise against gravity. So you have gone for another aerodynamic principle that can subdue the principles of gravity, and hence is able to rise. So that being settled, I need you to also understand that principles are in stages, and that's why it's good to seek wisdom. The better the wisdom you seek, the more the understanding of the principles that would help you and that would keep you in the right path and will protect you. So one great thing about principle is that it is there to protect you, it's there to make outcomes predictable. And that's why you need to understand the holistic integration of this balancing of power, principles, and purpose together. Now, after breaking down our whole life into a whole program, and you ultimately know that at the end of your life, you would ask yourself the purpose of going to school. You ask yourself the purpose of marrying, the purpose of the kids, the purpose of the houses you build, the companies you build, the purpose of the nations you led, the society, the club, the groups that you're the leader or a member of. You ask yourself every geographical location you've lived, the purposes of why you have to stay in those environments for those time. All these things have their own ultimate purpose. Things don't just happen without a cause. Everything has a cause. So understanding this would help you balance the concept of the power you have as a person or at a positional level, integrating it with the principles that we'll talk about soon, and then driving it towards a purpose. So at every point, either you're made the leader of an organization, the leader of a department, you're made the marketing executive, just name it. Whatever group you find yourself to be leading or anywhere you find yourself to be interacting with that society, understand that there's a purpose why you're there. There's a power that has been given to you, and there are principles that will guide you towards some success. Now, the capacity to wield those power and leveraging the principles that are in that environment will determine the quality of results that you would get and ultimately dictate the kind of purpose you would have achieved. All right, the ultimate measure of a leader is not where they stand in moments of comfort. I want to establish this because the true point where purpose is defined is actually during challenges. In fact, I've had it said several times that organizations learn well during crisis. Can I shock you? Even human beings do the same. And I think because organizations are made up of humans, then the organization is just reflecting the true nature of men. We all listen more when there's crisis. We all think more deeply when there's crisis. And the reason why you should love challenges, because challenges are the point where you actually birth bigger purposes. So for you that love running away from when they say things are hard, then you're probably not ready for purpose. Purpose is not defined in the place of comfort. Martin Luther King came about a time in American history where there is a lot of power disequilibrium between different races. And he took him upon himself with intellectual power, the societal power, the socio-cultural power that he had in his time, with strength of intelligence. He was able to build a social movement that engaged the government and reduced the power balance. I want to tell you today that even in a home, between husband and wife, there's power balance, power disequilibrium. In an organization, there are different power levels. You could be a mid-level manager and have a higher power than your CEO. Intellectually, but maybe not positionally. You may even be socioeconomically more influential than him. So I just want you to start looking at different dimensions with which we would analyze this. But the ultimate measure of your leadership is not when things are comfortable and going well. The ultimate measure of your leadership is when things are challenging. And when you have to think out of the box, when you have to read, study, understand the environment, and be able to birth new purposes. And like I always talk about living minds. Living minds are those who have new fire, who are able to birth new purpose with passion, always declaring positively, strengthening themselves and building things. They want to be merchants in the deep blue sea and not at the shore. Because if you want to be a person of purpose, you will never play at the shore. You will always want to seek to go into the deep. Those who play at the shore are competitive. Those who play in the deep are collaborative. Those who play at the shore seek comfort. That's where you hear people say, okay, with a few millions. But those who play at the deep, they keep defining new dreams, new ideals, new ideas. And that is the goal. That for every day you have the opportunity to draw breath, you're actually creating a new purpose that would impact not only you, your team, your family, your community, your society, and your nation as a whole. And I want you to allow this to marinate into your mind as we go before I start discussing about the concept of power. Success without integrity is failure. Please, let's get this as the sole reason why we're discussing this. If you have made mistake, integrity dictates that you recover and restore yourself. I said in the last month's discussion or webinar, I said that leaders don't always make the right decision. But at every point when you know that a decision is no longer right, it is your responsibility as a leader to correct the decision. So leaders don't always make the right decision, but they make the decision right. So even when, because of ethical failure, ethical failing, or any form of government territory that you do have enough power to make the right decision ab initio. Because of that, if you later discover along the line that this is a mistake, this is a fundamental mistake, then it is your responsibility as a leader to correct such. And to hold up transparently with a great deal of accountability at this point. So please let's establish it that whatever you're doing as a person now, if you're a leader in a church, society, or group, or in any form of environment, achieve results with integrity. Do not lie to achieve a result. Do not manipulate the system to favor you to achieve a result. Ensure that the result comes as a result of the integrity of your heart. Give everything as in discipline, diligence, dedication to achieve the result. Do not take shortcuts. Do not self-sabotage. At every point where you think you're achieving a result, but you're breaking rules, or breaking the law, or breaking the order of things, you're actually building failure. You're achieving a short-term success for a longer-term failure. And ultimately, don't forget, the end of the program will be evaluated at the end. So that will be a long-term evaluation. That being established, then I need to talk about the concept of power. I want you to know that power is a double-edged sword. It can be used constructively to uplift others, and it can be used destructively to dominate others. If you talk about economic power, socio-political power, and intellectual-based power, I would also love you to know that at the base of this form of power, you could also add a form of supernatural, or what I could call a spiritual base to the power. When you notice that people bring a lot of expertise and intellectualism into a scenario, they probably may have the technical advantage of a divine revelation. Trust me, people know things ahead of time. And that's a form of power. The capacity to strategically plan ahead of time and know the things that will happen in 10 years and go and position for that thing. I will give you a very practical example. I used to have someone who told me that at a time in their life, all they were just asking or demanding from God is they want to give birth to a child. But at that time, he just went visiting a friend, and the friend was just discussing and said, look, I see and I perceive that in the future, this place is going to be economically advantageous. Why not go around and purchase a couple of plots of land in that area? And trust me, just about 20 years later, the place became a mega success. Socioeconomically, the person had prospered, but it was based on a supernatural orientation, advantage. Sociopolitically, people can be placed in positions that will give them that power. Intellectually, people can lead to a power base. So what I want to admonish us to do, can we all go on mute, please? Kindly go on mute. Okay, thanks. So why am I going through this? I want you to start paying attention to the things that grant you power. And you need to understand the one that is so peculiar to you. At personal level, what are the things that grant you that strength of power? Is it your quality of learning and knowledge? Then that means you may be getting advantage from some intellectualism. That means if you invest more in this, you would increase the quality of your power at personal level. So if you have the strength to study, then I would say study hard, study good, and study things that are applicable to solutions in your society, such that your quality of knowledge will then give you better positioning. So as you're enjoying intellectual power, you're also getting this positional power. You're also networking with people, and the network is giving you a greater dimension of influence in your society. When you do this too, you're more likely going to earn more, and the more you earn, the more the economic power that you get. When you are able to integrate these three dimensions of power, understanding the supernatural way the world works, and you're able to leverage this, trust me, you are, if you could permit me to say, you're becoming a dangerous person. If you can integrate these three together, and you can master this art that I call LTSS, and please, I need you to listen. If you can master the art of continuous learning, continuous thinking, continuous speaking articulately and clearly, and continuous scripting, that's writing clearly. If you can master these four things with your intellectual skill, your social political advantage, and your economic power, you would influence more than anyone on earth. You would influence anybody. So, if there's one thing I need you to take away from this webinar today, please learn the art of learning to do something, thinking about it, and bringing up what we call a coherent philosophy, then please learn to speak articulately. And when I mean that, ensure that you are concise. I was discussing with my wife 2 days ago, thereabout. I was listening to Benjamin Netanyahu, that's the Israel leader. He was with the new president of the United States. And he kept saying, my goal is 3 things. 3 things I want to achieve. 3 things I want to achieve. Even though the president of the United States was saying everybody wants peace, including him, he said, I want 3 things. It was articulate, was clear about those 3 things, and was telling it to the journalists. As a person, you've jumped into, you're now in 2025. What are the 3 things you want to achieve? Have you started learning about them? Have you started thinking about it? Have you started speaking about it? Have you started writing about it? Have you written down a plan? I have clarity on what I want to achieve this year. I've written them down. I'm in pursuit of them. I'm articulate about it. I know when and how I want it. I'm organizing my life around those results. And as I'm achieving each of them, I'm checking them out. But you need to learn. You need to think. You need to speak, and you need to write script. Now, don't forget that without principles and purpose, power becomes an oppressive instrument. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because, we learned in politics, or from politics, that power corrupts. But we learned from transformational leadership idea that power actually doesn't corrupt. Power actually reveals. So, what people think is that by the time you become the HOD of that department, that is when you start stealing money. Or start using your influence to manipulate results. Or for you that want to manipulate the score, that's when it started. But the truth about it is that you have always had it in you, because you have never dealt with the principles that will protect you from that weakness. And you have never had a greater purpose that will force you to be disciplined to subdue that weakness in you. So, there are some things as of today that if it's given to you, it's practically more likely to destroy you than it's going to help you. Like for some people, if they give you a check of 10 million naira today, that's the beginning of your destruction. You would start a purposeless life from that moment, because the weight of that fund is going to weigh in on you and destroy your ethical standing. And before you know it, you will rationalize even what is practically wrong. Power did not corrupt you. The socioeconomic power didn't corrupt you. The $10 million or 10 million rand or whatever it is just exposed the weaknesses in you. So the question is, how do I prepare for the 10 million? Then you grow to it. You build a business and you grow in process to achieving the 10 million. Not that you jump on it and get it as a gift. And that is why it might be more profitable for you, even if you're given a gift of that amount, to say, can you put it in a trust for me? Let me grow and catch up with these funds. Because you truly need to grow in character, in principles, to be able to take on some position. I've had it said that some people are accidental leaders. And I've had a lot of questions that how do I deal with it if a position gets bestowed on me accidentally? And I say you're not the first person that will achieve the position of being a captain without even preparing for how to handle a ship. But the question is simple. If you find yourself in a position you're not prepared for, then the first thing is take a posture of humility. You need to take a posture of great humility and let it be clear and articulate it clearly that I am not prepared for this position. But I will need the help of everyone in this organization to drive this organization to success. You need to take a position of leading with sound ethical values. If you find yourself in a position you're not prepared for and it's accidentally bestowed upon you, maybe the death of someone, sudden retirement, or you just find yourself in a crisis position and people have to be fired and you have to lead an organization, then you need to start with a lot of empathy. As after humility and transparency, you need to start with a lot of empathy. You need to put people first. And while you're doing this, you need to now evaluate those who know in the organization. You need to know those who know outside of the organization. So you need to seek help of a consultant. You need to seek help of those who know and have gone through the process before. So you need to be humble to learn. And trust me, I've always found out that if you're able to do this in 2 years, at the average, it's been from studies and even from my personal observation, that within 2 years, they will stop calling you an accidental leader. If you can take the humble disposition. So many of us are taking on jobs and positions that we're not prepared for. But the reality is, even if they're giving you a job that you're not prepared for, then join the job with a lot of humility and position yourself to learn and to keep learning. And position yourself under a leader that would help you grow. But you need to aggressively learn. You need to passionately learn. And you're not only learning the core knowledge or the core technical knowledge, you're also learning how to manage people. And at no point should you allow the position be a pressure or a burden upon you. The world has been visited by so many accidental leaders. And I want to tell you that if you ever find yourself in that position, please understand the concept of humility. And by that I mean putting others, the advantages that goes to others above your own personal interest. Number two, understand that in every society or system where you are, people have their own opinions and their own interests. So for everyone who would come to you to discuss something, they actually have an interest while they're doing that. So how do you ensure that people do not misguide you? Then put in the principle of transparency. So if someone calls you behind your back and says, look, don't tell Mr. B, this is what we should do, then please get to the meeting and expose everything that is being said. You may protect Mr. A's identity, but you can run the idea through everybody in the organization. If you run through transparency initiative, you would save yourself a greater deal in the long run. In the short run, it might look like a disadvantage because the person with whom you have exposed what they have come to tell you in private may feel bad, may even go work against you. But in the long run, if you can stand your ground courageously, you will find out that it is better to align with transparency than to align with occultic or silo-based system in an organization. So never be part of a silo. Find a way to break into every network and work transparently with everyone. One of the reasons why agile project management has been a superior project management to the traditional form is that there's a lot of transparency and respect in the process. The project manager or the scrum master does not see himself as a leader, like a de facto leader whose opinion has to count. At every point, decisions are made by the team, including himself. And that gives a lot of respect and openness to everyone. The reason why the older one failed, the traditional project management failed or keeps failing, is because the project manager puts the burden upon himself to be the one to determine the quality of outcome of every project. So if you find yourself as an accidental leader, please uphold the principles of justice, fairness, equity, and transparency. Enter humbly, make sure you build empathy into your system, and create a sound learning system. You would find out that in an average of 1 to 2 years, you will catch up the power balance in that society, and they will stop calling you an accidental leader. But if you fail to do just what I have said, you will discover that in 2-3 years down the line, you will also destroy the system. So it's a choice for you. You can choose to help the system by becoming humble and learning and holding on to this force courageously. Or you can choose to ultimately destroy yourself and the system together. The choice is yours. So it might not be your fault that you got into power accidentally, but it will be your fault in 2, 3, 4, 5 years if you fail to develop yourself at a tremendously fast rate. We all have gotten positions before we didn't prepare for. I have been at this, I've always gotten into several positions myself. But what has rescued me is the capacity to learn, holding on to principles of transparency, empathy, learning, trying to understand the system as fast as possible, and then catching on the balance of power. When power is not grounded in principles or purpose, it leads to authoritarianism. I've explained this to a large extent. It forces leaders to become manipulative. So if you find yourself as a leader in an organization which you're not prepared for, or you don't have the capacity or the power for, you probably may have to resort to manipulation, coercion, or for self-interest. And that's the weakness with power. It can lead to ethical erosion because people will now be more about short-term gains as against long-term gains. Power should never be used to manipulate or force people to achieve short-term results, even though in the nature of man and in the nature of the followers, what more people want is immediate and quick return. But as a leader, you must set them on the right principle for them to see not 2 years, not 3 years, but 10, 20, 25 years ahead. And that whatever capacity you're building today is going to be advantageous not only for you, but for your children and your children's children. That is the sustainability plan. And that's why many nations, when they get leaders who are trying to make change happen, they force themselves to revolt against the leader. Because human nature just is myopic and wants that quick turnaround. But please, if you want transformational success, it is not a quick fix. And I repeat, transformational outcomes do not come from quick fixes. So if you just graduate from a university and you're hoping to just eat that $10 million spontaneous because you heard about a singer who did that, what you don't know is that some people have traded off their longer term gain for their current term achievement. You don't want to be like that. That is not your own purpose. Your own purpose is that at the end of your life, you look back and ask yourself, have I done this based on the right principles? Have I built well? That is what will matter on your deathbed. Not the $1 million you have now. Money itself at the point of death wouldn't even count again. What you'll be asking is the quality of life, the quality of results, the quality of relationships that you've built. The people who look at you and say, you have done well by me, even when things were not looking rosy. And if you have power without a clear purpose, of course, there will be mission drift. You would use the power to destroy your credibility. You will compromise sound ethics. Of course, you know principles are ethical frameworks that guide what we do. And they serve as the leader's moral compass so that power can be used in a just way. Leaders who lack strong principles will definitely misuse power. So even in your own small way as a child, I've seen children manipulate their ways in family. It's as good as that. Just because you know the people love you, that's a form of power. That's a form of social or political power. By your positioning in the family, maybe you're the last born. You just notice that they love you and you start manipulating everybody to just get money. You're already building a wrong process for yourself. What you don't know is that you think you're making money. But what you're doing is that you're losing value. You're losing credibility. You're losing the strength you should build by working hard to become a better person. It also goes to either wives who manipulate their husbands or husbands who manipulate their wives. And by manipulation, I mean getting a result that you're not due for. Or trying to ask for something you do not even qualify or have the capacity to handle. Or something you don't deserve it, but you just want it at all costs. And you don't care what you have to trade off. So many homes come crashing simply because someone had manipulated his way to achieve a certain result in an area, and then the family balance couldn't handle it. And because the power discrepancy is unstable, then it opens up a crack in the family, and then all other things can slip in and then destroy the home. Some people's home were lost because of the job some people took. It's as simple as that. Or maybe because of some pursuit that were stronger and bigger than who they were supposed to be. So I want you to understand that if you want to do things, ask yourself the core question: am I acting honestly, transparently, and with accountability? If anybody finds me at this point, do I have some questions in my heart? Once you can feel that you have some questions in your heart, then you are not acting with integrity. If they find me in this club, let's say my pastor or my leader finds me in this club, will he ask me some questions? If the answer is yes, then you need to get out of that club. It's as simple as that. If they find me even walking around this club, will there be questions? If the answer is yes, then you shouldn't be around that place. If they find me with this drink in my hand, will there be questions? If the answer is yes, even though it is 7% alcohol, not 72, it doesn't matter. It's a question of, am I acting transparently and with accountability? Would I be able to tell my children and children's children that this that I've done is right? If the answer is a no, I won't be able to, then you know you're not acting with integrity. So if there's a self-reflection basis to all these things, am I acting with fairness and human dignity? These words that I've said to my husband, if he has said it back to me, would I take it well? This lie that I've given to my wife, if I had received the same lie, will I take it well? This lie that I've given to my boss, I told my boss I'm going somewhere, and I found I knew actually I was going somewhere else. That's not integrity, and you're also not dignifying the humanity of your leader or your boss. So uphold fairness and human dignity. Then also understand something from today, that violence does not solve problems. In most cases, it destroys the system. People have said there's no peace without war. I know that. But you know the best form of peace that lasts longer? Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther. All these folks have brought about transformative change that is traveling, ravaging generations with a non-violent approach to transformational leadership, upholding the principles of power and holding on to it for so long until the deal breaks. Because if you hold on for so long, the result always comes. Winston Churchill. But you must hold on with the right principles, please. You must hold on with the right value system. Keep reevaluating what you're holding on to so that you know when to jump the curve of innovation. Because for something, they have to change, but you are changing to something better. Because if you're in the business of selling eyes at a commercial location in this generation, you probably may be at a loss. But if you jump to selling refrigerator, you may be doing well. So I just want you to know that there are some points where you need to jump the curve, but non-violence is always better than violence. You must reject oppression. You must reject in a non-violent way. You must leverage intellectual, socio-political, and socio-economic power and spiritual power integrated together to resist evil. But you also must know as a principle that all your life must be about serving, giving, leading for the benefit of others rather than personal gain. If you can uphold these principles in whatever you're doing, you're already on your way to transformational results. What am I doing today that is a gift back to the society? Even if it's something little, ask yourself that. If you don't have that, then you're probably not living and not touching any lives. And you're not on any way to transformational leadership. I can talk about Tony Elumelu's foundation. I can talk about several other foundations, Aliko Dangote. I'm trying to make names that we could relate to it. But they didn't start when they become, when greatness came upon them. They started even when they were young. So you must understand that these things are things that have to start with you. And ultimately, purpose is what gives you meaning. And how do you achieve that? You must make sure that in your environment, you're clear about what you want. Be courageously clear. Don't want something today and want something else tomorrow that is not in congruence. Ensure that your actions are aligning with your long-term impact, not short-term gains. Don't tell people fast and you are eating. Don't tell people save, invest, and you are spending. Whatever you're saying and your actions should align with long-term advantages. Don't tell people learn, study, read, and you are not reading. And that goes to speak to even me that I'm talking to you. And that's why I position myself to learning, to study, to thinking, and to speaking and even scripting things. Because I know it's one of the major strengths that will make me very powerful. And when I gain that social influence, I'm not going to use it to destroy the world. I would use it to uplift men. And ensure that whatever you're doing, you're putting in place problem solving, innovate in an innovative way, and then developing and mentoring followers. As my time is wrapping up, I just want to tell you the story, a short story of a former finance minister in Nigeria who set out to tackle corruption, brought out the concept of transparency into leadership and governance. At a time when Nigeria needed so much help, we're just coming out of a very bad government system that was riddled in a lot of debt, corruption, economic mismanagement, and even the socio-economic development of the nation was stagnant at that point, if not declining. We needed someone who had a lot of knowledge, intellectualism, Harvard-trained economist, with a lot of experience from WTO, which is currently leading now. What I need you to know is that there is strength in allowing those who have that intellectual capital, socio-political capital, power to lead in an organization. And she did well by negotiating the Paris Club to secure an unprecedented $18 billion debt cancellation in 2005. I want you to know that personal level, transformation doesn't just jump at people. People grow into it. And so for whatever you're doing today, what are the strategic positioning you're doing for yourself? You need great schools to train you. You need bigger, better, more expensive and well-sound organizations to train you. But you need to grow into it. Don't just jump. Grow gradually into it, but keep learning. Keep positioning yourself. And keep thinking and aligning things coherently. Ensure that you have a sound value system. She was noted to always say that I came to serve my people. I came to serve my people. I came to serve my people. So at every point when she needed to make a decision, she knew why she was there. There was clarity of purpose. I came to serve my people so I can rescue them from this economic quagmire. What are you doing in that your own little place? You should be saying, I am obsessed with serving the customer. When a customer comes, I want them to get the best value for their money. In fact, I want to upsell them so that they can get higher value. So as an administrator, I'm there and a customer is before me. I want them to get the maximum value, so I give them detailed explanation. It doesn't happen at that point. It happens before the customer shows up. You have already trained yourself on what to say, how to say it. You probably have a checklist of the things to say, so that when a customer comes, you're well prepared. You know who to call, when to call, how to organize things for people. You think ahead of the customer so that you are so customer obsessed that they achieve that great result, and all you want to achieve is customer delight. Every organization that goes through that path achieves excellent results. I was listening to the CEO of Amazon. He explained our customer obsession and obsession with operational excellence are one of the 4 critical points that led to the growth and expansion and explosion of Amazon, if I could say. To wrap up my discussion, I want to tell you the story of Satya Nadella. Satya as a name actually means someone of truthful essence. It's an Indian origin name. And I have a couple of bosses that are Satya as well. Truth, the name meant. One of the key things that Mahatma Gandhi held on to, that we will stand on the truth until we're able to break through, break out. Of course, in 2014, Microsoft seemed to be losing its competitive edge, like I said earlier. And other companies are already rising and trying to neutralize their impact globally. And he needed to do something. And in one of the interviews I listened to, he mentioned that both Bill Gates and Palmer told him, those are the two CEOs ahead of him, do not become like us. Just be you. Which is one of the great advice I would give you today as well. Don't become like me, be you. But in being you, understand your own power base. Some of you would have better power socio-politically, some socio-economically, some intellectually, some spiritually. However you are able to get the power, but understand that you are bounded, we are all bounded by the same principles of honesty and integrity. This man introduced empathy into a company. Apart from acquiring LinkedIn, GitHub, expanding more into cloud-based computing, Azure, which is now ravaging a lot in the industry. I could recollect the payments so many companies make to Microsoft monthly, just to maintain their cloud presence. And of course, invest in security and all those in cloud computing. Apart from repositioning the organization in that strategic direction, it did what was most important, cultural transformation, because the people themselves have to be changed or transformed, if I may. And because of that, he had to introduce the concept of empathy that broke down all the internal silos in the organization, embedding empathy into Microsoft's DNA. And empathy simply means you think ahead of others, you think about others, you think for others, and you ensure that there's individualized consideration in all decisions you're making. So it became a collaborative environment again, and everybody says they now listen to us. Now they understand us. Now they are supporting us to work together as a team. And he was noted to always saying, empathy makes you a better innovator. Empathy makes you a better innovator. Because, I say this to my developers. Because you're very intelligent and you can write codes, you think everything ends with the code. But the truth about it is you can build a very beautiful platform and the customer will never embrace it. Do you know why? You did not pay attention to the flashpoints and the pain point of the customer. So when you're doing requirement gathering and you're listening to customer talking, what I'm always interested in is what are the things that extend your time longer than what you should have done? Maybe how would you have done this in a better way? Could this have been done 30 minutes less if you had had this? Those are the crucial questions to ask. If you click this thing and there's a delay of 10 seconds, will this 10 seconds matter to the life of the patient before you? If the answer is yes, then I need to get a program that can do that thing with a delay of less than 4 seconds. If that is what will matter to the nurse. Because if you don't align with that, the nurse will leave the application aside and will go ahead and attend to the patient directly. What would we have done? We would have wasted money investing in digital solution. So, you want to build an organization where people believe you're listening. You're understanding their pain. There's an empowering nature in the organization such that your people can show empathy to your customer. And that's when they can innovate better to support the customer. If you don't create systems like that, it's going to boomerang on whatever profit you have in the long run. When a leader of a bank took over a certain bank in Nigeria, I remember telling my wife that in a couple of years' time, this bank is going to run into a problem. How did I know? He removed empathy from the system. The initial leader, who was the founder, actually died. But the guy was noted for a lot of empathy. He had a one-on-one connection with every member of his team. Every of his full staff had shook hands with him before. And he had spoken to them, and they danced with him. And he had told them the vision of the organization and how and why they should buy into it. This other guy came and thought he could use money to do everything. He was so dismissive. He spoke to people carelessly. He broke the team down. And I'm very sure you probably could predict the bank I'm talking about as of now. If you, as a person, the father of a home, will speak dismissively to your wife, to your kids, it's only a matter of time. You get kids, just give them 10, 15 years. They become mature and they speak against you back. Because that's the way you have created the environment. If you want an excellent kid in the future, you better respect them now. And so someone had told me many years ago, when I was about giving birth, or when we do, he said, if you know that your child is going to be the president of your country in 50 years, how would you start speaking to that child from now? Yes, I told him I'm going to be, I would manage the environment with discipline, but I would also speak strength into him. Because I wouldn't want him to do things that would jeopardize his future and that will bring a lot of questions to his leadership. So I would create a disciplined environment. But more importantly, when he's talking, I will respect him. I've told my wife a couple of times in recent years that I've started respecting our kids. And that's how you should do. Don't see them at your level yet. Respect them for their current level. For the things they know that you didn't know at those age. I want to wrap up my discussion today that your goal, your greatest purpose in life is the lasting impact. That big purpose is the lasting impact at the end of your life. I'm thinking more for you about on a longer term than you might be thinking on a shorter term for yourself. Because all you want is, I want to escape from this pain. But I want you to know that there's something more dangerous than just escaping the pain. Escaping the pain is what is driving you. But my role is to make you see that it's not about just escaping this pain. It's about building a structure that will carry you so that when you're out of the pain, this would keep you going. When you are so obsessed about escaping the pain, you will violate principles. When you violate those principles, Miles Monroe said you don't violate principles. It's principle that actually violates you. Because you thought you're violating principles. You're telling lies, right? It's not a small lie. What you don't know is that you're building destruction here. The more lies you are creating here, you're building bigger destructions here. Because you'd have destroyed a lot of value system here. On the day of crisis, the reason why you fail is because you have never built capacity in the short term. So I think it's scriptural to say that on the day of crisis, that is when we will know your true strength or true thing you have built. And it is crisis that determines if you become transformed. How you perform during COVID-19. How you perform when your boss wants you to do the wrong thing. How you performed when you were being threatened by police, immigration, military, anything. How you perform in the day of crisis. How you perform when you're studying for the exam. How you performed in the exam, during the exam. How you perform during this time is what determines how transformed you will be. But how you perform during this time is also a function of how you prepared here. And the quality of power, principles, and purpose you have defined. Thank you so much for listening. I want you to know is that ethical and transformational leaders shape the world by ensuring their leadership is not just powerful, but it's principled and it's purpose-driven. The day they start calling you that your principle is too much, that is the day you have started becoming a successful person. The day they tell you that, why are you this principled? Just know that, in fact, just kneel down and say, thank you so much. That means you have now started to identify that I'm a great person. But when they tell you that everything just goes with you and you are the nice person, you just allow everything to go, trust me, you have destroyed the future. But the day they say you're too principled, you're too hard, why is it hard on you like this? That's the day you should start knowing that you're on the way to greatness. In fact, you should go home happy that day because someone has spotted greatness in you. Thank you so much for listening. I wouldn't know if you have any question from the audience. If there's one question I can take in the 1 minute that I do not have. I want to thank you so much for listening. I'll be stopping at this point. I need to jump on the journey to another training program, even myself. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.